Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I am an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. The Bold and the Beautiful spoilers suggest that a storm of emotional consequences is about to erupt as Brooke Logan Forrester finds herself pushed to the edge after Hope Logan Spencer makes a shocking and unexpected announcement. The tension begins building the moment Liam Spencer steps in, encouraging Hope to move forward with Logan's new fashion direction and a line simply called Hope. That single decision sets off an emotional countdown, because Brooke's fury is already simmering and ready to explode at the smallest spark. Brooke is already deeply angered over Katie Logan Spencer's past betrayals, and now she sees Hope's involvement as yet another painful betrayal striking straight at her heart. Despite Brooke's desperate attempts to talk her daughter out of the decision and steer her away from the idea, Hope refuses to budge, standing firm in her choice with quiet determination that only fuels the conflict further. As emotions spiral out of control, Brooke's frustration quickly turns toward Liam, whom she begins to blame for planting the idea in Hope's mind. In her eyes, he becomes just another dirty Spencer, influencing her daughter's life in the wrong direction, intensifying the already fragile family dynamics. But Hope does not back down. Instead, she rises in defense of Liam, standing firmly by her husband and refusing to let Brooke's accusations go unchallenged. This creates a painful divide, as Hope ultimately aligns herself with Liam against Brooke and even against the wider Forrester Creations circle. The hostility spreads rapidly, turning family ties into battleground lines, where love, loyalty, and resentment collide in a deeply personal and emotional war. That rising tension soon begins to affect their living situation in a very real way, pushing everything toward a major shift in where Hope and Liam call home. Although the cabin set has not been actively used in quite some time, Liam and Hope still technically reside on Brooke's property, where their lives remain closely tied to her household. At times, they even enjoy the rare comfort of having the house to themselves, finding brief moments of peace and intimacy away from the chaos surrounding them. However, Brooke's growing anger may reach a point where she insists that Hope and Liam must leave her estate entirely, refusing to continue sharing her space with those she now sees as traitors. On the other hand, it is also possible that Hope and Liam themselves come to the conclusion that the emotional tension has become too heavy to endure, choosing to walk away on their own terms. In the end, the strain becomes mutual, as it feels increasingly impossible for Brooke, Ridge Forrester, Hope, and Liam to continue coexisting under the same roof, or even on the same property without constant conflict. With emotions running so high, separation may become the only path forward, even if it comes from a place of heartbreak rather than anger. Fortunately, Hope and Liam are more than capable of establishing a life elsewhere, as they clearly have the financial means to secure a home of their own. This shift could even open the door to a brand new house set for the couple, turning conflict into an unexpected opportunity for a fresh start. As the spoilers tease deeper trouble ahead from Hope's Logan decision, one thing becomes certain: nothing in this family will ever be the same again, so viewers will need to stay tuned for what comes next. As the fallout continues to spread, the emotional fractures within the Logan and Forrester families deepen in ways that no one can easily repair. What began as a single business decision tied to the Hope line now feels like a symbolic breaking point, exposing years of unresolved resentment and fragile alliances. Brooke's disappointment is no longer just about fashion or corporate direction. It becomes deeply personal, as if she is watching her own family drift further away from her with every passing moment. The home that once represented unity and shared history now feels charged with tension, every hallway carrying the weight of unspoken arguments and lingering hurt. Even the smallest interactions become strained, as past grievances resurface in subtle but cutting ways. It is no longer just about disagreement. It is about emotional survival under the same roof. Liam finds himself increasingly caught in the center of this emotional storm, trying to stand by Hope while also feeling the pressure of Brooke's anger pressing down on every side. His role, once seen as stabilizing, now becomes a source of division, as Brooke's distrust toward him grows sharper with each confrontation. Hope, meanwhile, becomes more resolute, no longer willing to quietly absorb criticism or question her decisions just to maintain peace. Her loyalty to Liam strengthens her resolve, even as it isolates her further from her mother's approval. The emotional gap between mother and daughter widens, transforming love into something strained and fragile, held together only by memory and obligation. Every attempt at reconciliation only seems to reopen old wounds instead of healing them. Within Forrester Creations, the ripple effects of the conflict are equally intense, as alliances begin to shift in quiet but meaningful ways. Colleagues and family members find themselves subtly choosing sides, even when they try to remain neutral. Conversations that once revolved around design and creativity are now overshadowed by tension, suspicion, and divided loyalties. The presence of the Hope line itself becomes emotionally charged, representing not just a brand, but a symbol of defiance and independence. What should have been a moment of professional growth instead becomes a point of division that affects morale and trust within the entire company. Even Ridge, long accustomed to navigating family turmoil, senses that this conflict carries a different kind of emotional weight, one that is harder to contain or resolve quickly. As the atmosphere grows heavier, the idea of separation becomes less like a possibility and more like an inevitability hanging over everyone involved. The shared spaces that once held laughter and family moments now feel like reminders of what is being lost. Brooke, despite her anger, cannot fully escape the emotional pain of watching Hope drift away, even as she stands firm in her convictions. Hope and Liam, on the other hand, begin to envision a future where they are no longer constantly surrounded by judgment and conflict, where their decisions belong solely to them. That vision, while uncertain, starts to feel like the only path toward emotional peace. And yet, even as distance begins to form physically, the emotional ties binding them together remain unbroken, complicated by love, pride, and lingering heartbreak. In the midst of all this turmoil, one truth becomes increasingly clear. No one will emerge from this situation unchanged. Relationships that once felt permanent are now being tested in ways that could redefine them forever. The idea of family, loyalty, and forgiveness is being stretched to its limits, forcing each person to confront what they are willing to hold on to and what they must let go. As Hope's decision continues to send shockwaves through both households and boardrooms, the emotional temperature only rises further. Every interaction feels like it could be the one that tips everything over the edge. And with that, the story moves forward into even deeper uncertainty, where every choice carries consequences that cannot easily be undone. As the pressure intensifies, the emotional distance between Brooke and Hope stops being something that can be ignored or softened with time. Every attempt at conversation now carries an undercurrent of frustration, as if even their words are struggling to find common ground. Brooke's love for her daughter is still present, but it becomes buried beneath layers of disappointment and fear about what this decision means for their family legacy. Hope, however, begins to see her mother's resistance not as concern, but as control, an emotional boundary she no longer wants to accept. That difference in perception turns even simple discussions into emotionally charged standoffs, where neither side feels truly heard. What once was a bond built on deep understanding now feels like two people speaking from opposite worlds. Meanwhile, Liam's presence in the household becomes increasingly complicated, as he is pulled deeper into the center of the conflict, whether he intends it or not. He tries to maintain balance, but every effort to calm tensions seems to reinforce Brooke's belief that he is influencing Hope in the wrong direction. At the same time, Hope sees Liam as her anchor, the one person who stands beside her without hesitation or judgment. That loyalty strengthens their connection, but it also intensifies the divide with Brooke, making reconciliation feel even more distant. The emotional weight of being caught between wife and mother begins to wear on Liam, creating a quiet but persistent strain in his own sense of stability. Every decision he makes seems to carry consequences he cannot fully control, no matter how carefully he tries to navigate the situation. As days pass, the atmosphere within Brooke's estate becomes increasingly unrecognizable from what it once was. The home, once filled with warmth, laughter, and family gatherings, now feels divided into emotional territories marked by silence and tension. Even shared spaces carry a sense of unease, as if every corner remembers the arguments that unfolded there. Small moments of interaction, passing glances, brief exchanges, or accidental encounters, become emotionally loaded, each one reminding them of the growing distance between them. The idea of living under the same roof begins to feel less like comfort and more like emotional pressure building toward an inevitable breaking point. Everyone senses that something has to give, even if no one is ready to be the one to make that final move. Eventually, the question of who leaves becomes unavoidable, hanging over them like a decision waiting to be made. Brooke's frustration reaches a point where she can no longer imagine continuing to share her space with people she now views as having betrayed her trust. Yet even within her anger, there is an underlying sadness, an awareness that pushing them out may also mean pushing them further away from her life entirely. On the other side, Hope and Liam begin to seriously consider stepping away on their own, not out of defeat, but out of necessity for their emotional well-being. The idea of independence slowly transforms from a possibility into a plan, one that carries both relief and uncertainty. What once felt like a family home now becomes a crossroads where separation seems like the only path forward. And as this emotional separation takes shape, it begins to reshape everything around it, including how each of them views their future. The tension no longer exists only in arguments or confrontations. It lingers in silence, in distance, and in the unspoken understanding that things cannot return to how they once were. Brooke, Ridge, Hope, and Liam are all forced to confront the reality that coexistence may no longer be sustainable, no matter how much history binds them together. The emotional damage has reached a point where healing cannot happen in the same environment that created the wounds. Yet beneath all the anger and hurt, there remains a fragile thread of love that none of them can fully sever. And it is that contradiction, love mixed with conflict, that keeps everything hanging in a painful, uncertain balance as the story continues to unfold. As the separation begins to feel inevitable, a strange calm starts to settle over the chaos. Not a peace, but more like the silence after a storm has already made its damage known. Hope and Liam begin quietly moving toward the idea of establishing a place of their own, not as an act of rebellion anymore, but as a necessary step toward emotional clarity. What once felt like conflict now transforms into reluctant acceptance, as both of them realize that staying under Brooke's roof only prolongs the tension without offering any real resolution. The thought of a new home carries a mix of relief and sadness, because leaving also means accepting that a chapter of family life is ending in a way they never expected. Even as they make plans for independence, there are moments where doubt creeps in. Quiet reflections on whether distance will heal things or simply make the divide permanent. Still, the decision continues forward, shaped by the belief that space might be the only way to preserve what remains of their relationship. Back at Brooke's side, the emotional aftermath is far more complicated than anger alone can explain. In the absence of constant confrontation, what remains is a heavy stillness that forces her to sit with everything that has unfolded. Her frustration with Hope and Liam does not simply disappear, it lingers, but it begins to intertwine with something more vulnerable: regret, memory, and the weight of what family separation truly costs. The house, once filled with emotional noise, now feels emptier in a way that echoes louder than any argument ever could. Ridge observes the shift as well, sensing that beneath Brooke's hardened exterior, there is a woman struggling with the consequences of trying to protect her family in the only way she knew how. Yet pride and pain continue to stand in the way of reconciliation, making it difficult for anyone to bridge the growing emotional gap. At Forrester Creations, the ripple effects continue to evolve as the Hope line moves forward under a cloud of lingering tension. The project itself becomes both a professional milestone and an emotional reminder of everything that was sacrificed along the way. Colleagues remain aware that the success of the line is now tied to personal relationships that have fractured under pressure, giving every meeting and decision an added layer of meaning. Even small achievements feel complicated, as celebration is tempered by the awareness that not all bridges within the family remain intact. The workplace, once defined by creativity and collaboration, now carries the subtle weight of emotional history that no one can fully ignore. As time moves on, the possibility of rebuilding what was lost begins to feel both distant and uncertain, yet not entirely impossible. The emotional wounds are still fresh, and trust remains fragile, but the shared history between them refuses to disappear completely. Each person is left navigating their own version of the aftermath. Hope and Liam stepping into independence, Brooke confronting the cost of her convictions, and the rest of the family adjusting to a changed dynamic that cannot easily be reversed. The future remains unwritten, shaped by choices that continue to echo long after they are made. And as this chapter closes in one way, it quietly opens the door to whatever comes next, where healing, conflict, and unexpected turns may still lie ahead in ways no one can fully predict. As the emotional dust slowly begins to settle, life does not return to normal, but instead reshapes itself into something unfamiliar for everyone involved. Hope and Liam finally take concrete steps toward building a life separate from Brooke's home, choosing a space that represents not just independence, but emotional distance from the constant tension that has defined their recent days. The move is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, almost restrained, as if they are careful not to turn an already painful situation into something even more explosive. Yet beneath that calm surface, there is a deep emotional shift happening, one that marks the end of an era they once assumed would be permanent. Each packed box feels like a small acknowledgement that things have changed beyond repair, at least for now. And as they leave behind familiar walls, there is both relief and an unspoken ache that follows them into the unknown. Brooke, meanwhile, is left to face the emptiness of the estate in a way she never anticipated would feel so heavy. The absence of hope does not arrive all at once. It lingers in small, almost invisible moments, like silence at the dinner table or the lack of footsteps echoing through the halls. What once felt like routine family life now feels like a space suspended in memory, where every corner carries reminders of what has been lost. Her anger, which once burned brightly, begins to shift into something quieter and more complicated. It is no longer just about blame or disappointment. It becomes a reflection of everything she tried to protect and everything that still slipped through her grasp. Even in her strongest convictions, there is now a lingering question she cannot fully silence: whether love and control ever truly walk hand in hand. Ridge watches this shift unfold with a quiet understanding, recognizing that no one has truly won in this situation. The conflict may have forced decisions, but it has also left emotional damage that cannot be easily undone. He sees Brooke wrestling with pride and regret in equal measure, caught between holding her ground and acknowledging the cost of that stance. At the same time, he understands Hope's need for independence, even if it came at the expense of family unity. In his eyes, the situation is not about right or wrong anymore. It is about people trying to survive the emotional consequences of choices made under pressure. And that realization makes the silence in the house feel even heavier, as if everyone is living in the aftermath of something far larger than a single disagreement. Across town, Hope and Liam begin adjusting to their new reality, where the tension of Brooke's household no longer defines their daily rhythm. Their new space brings a sense of calm that feels both refreshing and unfamiliar, as if they are relearning how to exist without constant emotional interference. Yet even in this calmer environment, the weight of what they left behind does not disappear entirely. There are moments of reflection, where memories of Brooke and the fractured family dynamic resurface unexpectedly, reminding them that distance does not erase history. Still, there is also a growing sense of possibility, an opportunity to define their relationship and their future without external pressure shaping every decision. It is a fragile kind of peace, but it is peace nonetheless. Back within the broader circle of the Forrester and Logan families, the ripple effects continue to evolve in quieter but lasting ways. Conversations that once centered around conflict slowly begin to shift back toward work and daily life, though the emotional undercurrent never fully disappears. The hope line moves forward, carrying with it both professional success and personal complexity, a constant reminder of what sparked the division in the first place. Over time, the intensity of the conflict softens, but it never fully fades into the background. Instead, it becomes part of the family's emotional history, something unspoken but always understood beneath the surface. And as life continues moving forward, one truth quietly settles over everyone involved. Nothing will ever return exactly to what it once was. Relationships have been reshaped, boundaries have been redrawn, and emotional scars remain even as new routines begin to form. Yet within that change, there is also the possibility, however uncertain, of healing in ways that are slower, more complicated, and far less predictable than anyone originally hoped. The story does not end in resolution or reunion, but in transition, where each person is left carrying both the weight of what happened and the uncertain hope of what might still come next.